Hello, my name is Martin. Welcome back to another video. Here we are in sunny Ancoats, the home of the designer sausage dog. Two canals coming out of the centre of Manchester here. We've got the Rochdale Canal, which is the one that we're concerned with today. And we've got the Ashton Canal running up this way here. That's the Ashton Canal, and you'll notice there's a join here through Ancoats and New Islington. There's like a marina here now. So I did the opening sequence where I was taking the mickey, please forgive me, around about this area here. And you'll see Rochdale Canal. Up until a couple of weeks ago, the Rochdale Canal wasn't navigable again, and we're only in April. And so the Manchester Evening News reported on the 10th of April 2026 that water had disappeared from the Rochdale Canal. Bit of argy-bargy between the Evening News and the council, and a particular boat, the pirate boat, has been left stranded again for the second time in months. That's the pirate boat there. But you can see it's bad, it's not looking good, and obviously I'm going to tell you what's happened. It's not down to a drought or anything like that, it's down to a breach in the Rochdale Canal just further up near Miles Platting. So since those Manchester Evening News pictures were taken, water has since been returned to the canal, and the waterless bit is now narrowed down to where the actual breach is. But if you're in Manchester as of late April 2026, you still can't navigate the Rochdale Canal as past Miles Platting. The breach is around about here in Miles Platting, less than a mile, just probably half a mile if that, just outside city centre. So there you go, that's where we are. We're just off the northern quarter, Ancoats and New Islington, and we're on the Rochdale Canal. Initially I was like, I'm interested in that, but then I found a report on the Manchester Evening News that said it had gone into an old culvert. So instantly on the word culvert, ears went up like a terrier. So we're going to take you now to Miles Platting, and we're going to try and shed some light into the breach that's just up here. Right, so we've come to the source of the problem. Where are we, Roy?
Well, we're over in Miles Platting, just down from Lock 87 on the Rochdale Canal, where the source of this problem is.
Okay, so just to recap, we're barely half a mile up the canal, going out of Manchester at Miles Platting, barely half a mile from Ancoats, just near the Butler Street Bridge that goes over the canal, and X marks the spot of the breach. Right, so I'm going to give you a bit of a close-up look at what's going on, and then we'll try to tell you what we think is the problem, and we're pretty certain it is the problem, but let's crack on. So the breach has now been controlled, and it's been controlled by two temporary dams, as you can see here, either side of where it's caved in. A dry section in the middle there, I'll show you what that is, that's caved in there. Obviously the dry section ran all the way to the top of the screen through into Manchester because the water was lost and coming up towards us as well to the bottom of the screen, but the dams have now controlled it. So here's a close-up of the temporary dam. They just used like a sheet and a frame. And then you can see there is a bit of a flow in canals, and they've allowed a flow to go through to the Manchester end. That's just taking a slight flow through. Maybe that's what they use partially to top it up as well. Okay, so here is the problem close up. You'll notice that water is escaping the dam slightly, coming in from both sides, from the right of the screen and the left of the screen, and still running down into where it's collapsed there. That is where it's gone. We desperately wanted to get in there, into the canal, get a light down there and get a camera down there and show you what we're going on. You'll notice some them barriers up the top there as well. That's part of it as well. So yeah, I wanted to go in there to have a poke around. Unfortunately, there is security on site keeping their eye on it, so we couldn't do what we wanted to do, which was to go in and to film down that hole for you. Alas, but I would have loved to have done that. But we think we know what's going on there. Now, I'm going to take you to the other side of the canal. I want you to just, if you look above here, you'll see the barriers there. That's older. That went over a year ago, that bit there. So them barriers have been there for a while. So I'm going to go to the other side now and try and get you some close-ups of what's going on that other side. You can see here there's a bit of the sinkhole here. That's the sinkhole. That's been there a while. And that goes down there. You can't see a lot down there. You can see it's full of earth. Now, one thing that is interesting from this side, if you look across there, I'm going to put an arrow now. Look how the towpath has sunk in there where the arrow is. So, you know, this is probably, if left alone, this would collapse even further along where that man is. Because look at it, it's sinking. So there's an old culvert underneath there that's in desperate state of need of repair, isn't there? But you can't see anything through that side. Now, is that a patchwork? Has that been repaired before? Don't know. There you go. And you can just see above here where the water's going down there now. And it's going down there. I can't show you down there. Well, there's the other side. And you see that at the minute hasn't collapsed. Now, you know us. We're a bit of a watercourse enthusiasts. Lost Rivers of Manchester and all that lot. So when we saw or heard that the canal had dropped into a culvert, alarm bells started ringing. And we started thinking, we know that this is a spiritual home of two of Manchester's lost rivers down here. I say rivers, they're more like little watercourses that we call brooks. Newton Brook and Shooter's Brook meet just beyond the bridge behind me up there. I don't know if you can see that. So we're thinking, oh my God, are we going to get a glimpse into Shooter's Brook? Which would have been amazing, but unfortunately that's not the case. Roy.
Now, in this area where we are currently, behind us, there was a dense concentration of textile mills, cotton mills, for want of a better word, although some had other uses. And the watercourse that came down here joins the Shooter's Brook to the right of the camera, another minor watercourse in Manchester, and further up another watercourse, the Newton Brook. So there was 3 watercourses here, and unfortunately this lesser one here that runs down from Oldham Road has caved in.
So all this talk of watercourses and where we are, I need to show you on the maps, and I need to show you some of the old maps so you get a glance into what this area used to be like. Okay, so what the hell are we on about? All these watercourses we're mentioning. Let me take time back to a map that was probably 1850s, 1860s, because the railways are on it. So here we are at Miles Platting. There's Butler Street, we'll use as a reference point. The breach is here, as we know. Taking time back, there you go. Right, so we've got 2 watercourses here. We've got the Newton Brook coming down here, and we've got the Shooter's Brook coming in here, and they meet here. And Butler Street is still here. There's Butler Street. There you go, Butler Street is still there. And they meet just this side of Butler Street. Now, Shooter's Brook runs this way, runs very close to the Rochdale Canal, because that's the Rochdale Canal there. Shooters at a lower level runs very close to the Rochdale Canal, and then down this way, and it will head on down through Manchester city centre to the River Medlock. But Newton Brook and Shooter's Brook met there. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about all these watercourses. Now, this breach, the breach occurred here just near Butler Street, didn't it, here? There is another watercourse not shown on this map that's probably buried at the time, because if you look at this, we've got all buildings here and a mill here, and it's probably a bit of a nothing watercourse. This is Oldham Road here. It's not even named, and it's so short it doesn't have a name, and it's not on the map. Now, the reason I know this is because we've looked at library records, and there is records of just an unnamed nothing watercourse here. So I'm going to show you, I have to retort to a modern map in a bit to show you what's going on. But you know we've got Newton Brook and you know we've got Shooters Brook here that met here. So this is why we were so excited, because we thought that the canal had breached and we were going to take a peek into the Newton Brook or Shooters Brook. But it's not the case. They met on the other side of Butler Street here. There's a caveat to that, but let's crack on. Now, the annoying thing is about these old water courses is that they used to run open. Miles Platting, Ancoats used to be fields, lovely fields with lanes and all the rest of it, and little streams and brooks you had to step over and walk over. They got culverted, and when we look at those old maps and we look at the courses of them, the way they run and meandered, that isn't always the case today. They've been put into pipes, culverted, some very old pipes, very old brickwork pipes, some of it concrete. They don't always follow exactly the route that they used to follow. Sometimes they're straightened out, sometimes they go a bit more angular, a bit more in straight lines. So you have to bear that in mind just for the accuracy of this video. Okay, this is the information we've got about watercourses in the area, and what Roy has done is projected it onto Google Maps. Now, first off, look over to the right. We've got Shooters Brook and Newton Brook, and where they used to run, you know, over 200 years ago, they ran through fields and meandered through little farms and things like that. They've now been culverted, and the culverts have made them look very straight and very angular. So they've took away all that natural element to them. And you'll notice that they have sharp bends and turns. And Newton Brook and Shooters Brook now join at point X there, much further away from the Rochdale Canal than they used to do. You'll also notice that they follow streets. They tend to follow streets and roads, and that's because back in the day, probably when, you know, Manchester started to grow and spread, they just culverted the brook down the middle of the street and redirected it in a cut and cover fashion. So they just open up the middle of the street, build a big long culvert and direct the brook into that. That's why they tend to follow the streets. Now let's look over to unnamed watercourse at the point at Y there. Where unnamed watercourse starts is on roughly around about Oldham Road, which used to be called Newton Lane. Now, this unnamed watercourse probably started from a spring somewhere out on, you know, Newton Lane / Oldham Road, and was just a bit of a nothing that ran down through a couple of fields and joined Shooters Brook. But because it flowed and because it was there, they've had to deal with it back in the day, shove it probably in a very old culvert and take it underneath the canal. And it's probably not been seen for over 200 years since the canal were built. Right, let me just try and put a little bit more meat on the bone on this idea of this unnamed watercourse. This map is a very old map of Manchester. It's 1700s, late 1700s. If I just zoom into there for you, it's, what does that say? 1787 to 1794. William Green's map of Manchester. I'm going to pull back out here. There's Manchester. If we just zoom in there, there's Swan Street and Great Ancoats Street. We need to go up to Miles Platting up here. So I'm going to zoom in even further and bring in Butler Street. Believe it or not, Butler Street is still there. It predates the canals, this map. Anyway, there's Butler Street, believe it or not. On this very old map, Butler Street still exists. And there we've got, that's the Newton Brook, and there's Shooters Brook joining there just near Butler Street, the way they used to, as we know. Now, the canal's here. The canal runs this way. But it's not on this map. But we know it runs underneath Butler Street here. Our unnamed watercourse came down here, pretty much on this line here, but this line doesn't represent it. But I'm looking and looking for clues to this unnamed watercourse. Suddenly I started to see these things. Little ponds here in the fields, right? Little ponds all over the place. And I'm thinking, right, so there's Butler Street, and there, just on, this is Oldham Road, but back then it was called Newton Lane. There's a pond there that probably, all these ponds were probably fed by little springs in the fields, right? And they probably kept them because, you know, if you want to water your crops or if you've got cattle, you need to keep these ponds, don't you? Because they're useful. But top of Butler Street was a pond, and I'm wondering if that was the spring that caused unnamed watercourse to run down here, down this side of Butler Street, underneath the Rochdale Canal that would be here, and it's what caused our canal to collapse. Who can tell? But I thought I'd just bring this very, very old map in for you to show all these ponds that were quite possibly springs and the source of our unnamed watercourse. That tantalisingly, that line seems to show the route of it, but I think these are little boundaries because the watercourses are quite distinct. You can see the watercourse there. That's Shooters. This is just, I think, a boundary. But good to see some of the street names still here. Butler Street, Rodney Street still there. So they've survived a while, haven't they? But there you go. I wonder if that's the culprit. Now, where it ends at point, where the blue line ends at point W there, on our map it ends there because beyond that it hasn't been surveyed according to the records. So there's no record of where it goes beyond that. It's not a mystery. It won't be a mystery. It'll either join the Newton Brook or probably Shooters Brook, and then all three of them will run eventually into the River Medlock. It's just we can't show it beyond that because it's not been surveyed. But that's it. That's the culprit. A bit of an absolute nothing watercourse without even a name that runs under the canal and joins Shooters Brook or Newton Brook. So I'd love to tell you it was one of the famous lost rivers of Manchester, but unfortunately it isn't. It's just some bit of a thing from a spring that was dealt with 200 years ago, over 200 years ago, run it under the canal, and it's probably never been looked at in, I wouldn't even like to say when there was engineers last down there. I bet it's only about 3 or 4 foot high anyway, the culvert. So that's your answer, that's what we've come up with. So let me tell you how Miles Platting got its name. I want you to imagine round here, we're just outside Manchester. It wasn't a city then, it was just a medieval quarter, and we've got fields. Ancoats is fields, the odd farmhouse. Miles Platting is now rural, the odd field, a lot of coal mines round here. You've got to make a journey and you want to go up to Failsworth or Newton Heath, or you're heading towards Oldham. It's quite a walk. You ask for directions. Now, you've got to cross the Newton Brook over that way, right? And these brooks then were a little bit more flow on them than there is now. They still collect rainwater along surface rainwater drains, but back then they were completely open. So any rain, it collected the whole lot. So in order to cross the Newton Brook, what people did, people needed a crossing point, and all they did was they threw down brushwood, reeds, plattings they called them. They threw them down in the brook because it's not a massive watercourse. They threw them down and it made it so you could just walk across without getting your feet too wet. Formed a sort of like bit of a temporary bridge, and probably everyone that came along threw a few more down so they could walk across. Plattings, and it was about a mile outside this Manchester, I want to say city centre, but it weren't a city then. About a mile outside Manchester. So you're on your journey, you ask for directions. Well, once you get a mile out of here, out of Manchester, you'll see the plattings that go across Newton Brook, and that's where you can cross. The plattings about a mile from Manchester. Miles Platting. I love that story. And for that story, I need to credit Mr. Geoffrey Ashworth from his book, The Lost Rivers of Manchester. That's where I learned that. Also, the other thing as well is, take a look at the area. This map's, honestly, it's gold. So, there's Butler Street. There's our two brooks meeting. Ancoats is just developing. Right, we've got a lot of housing around here, looks like, a couple of factories. But the minute you get outside to Miles Platting, outside of Ancoats to Miles Platting, it's just fields. Look at this. Just fields. Unbelievable, isn't it? Hume Hall Lane looks like it's still a lane. It's now a major artery, road artery through Manchester. And we've got Shooters Brook running open here, you know. So it would have been semi-rural, this. Other thing that's very interesting, that I find really interesting on Shooters Brook, look at this. footboard. I bet this was just a really temporary or little set of boards that went over Shooter's Brook, so that if you were walking down this lane here, you had a little some boards so you could get over Shooter's Brook and get your feet wet, but not a bridge, nothing like that, just a footboard. I think the terminology is fantastic, isn't it? And you'd only find that on a very old map. Like I say, this map's mid-1800s. Railways are on it, railways are there, but it's still an old map. And then look at this, coal pit, Gledon coal pit number 1, Gledon coal pit number 2. And we know in this area down here, we had Bradford Colliery. Bradford Colliery was round here, so that was still mining coal in the Manchester area up until the 1960s. Manchester City Stadium is around here now, around this area here. This area here. River Medlock. But fantastic, isn't it, to see all that? Coal pits, footboards, and Shooter's Brook and the Newton Brook running open. What a time to be alive.
Okay, so you might wonder why there's no work going on and why it apparently looks like they've done nothing for the last few weeks. They put these temporary dams in place. Well, let me tell you, it's not a straightforward repair, this. The culvert that runs under it predates the canal. So that stretch there that's drained at the minute is going to have to be totally excavated. And I don't think the Canal and River Trust on their own are going to be capable of doing such a job. It's going to involve council, third-party civils, and the whole area is going to have to be excavated. If you look at a clip that Martin took earlier, it started to sink on the other side of the canal as well. Also, if you note behind me, I don't know if you can see, there's some orange plastic barriers around the sinkhole near to the canal towpath. Now, I actually saw that last year, that occurred last year, and they've kind of done nothing with it, which sounds bad. And a year later, the whole thing's caved in. So, not straightforward, and I'm not sure what the fix is, but we will come down and keep an eye on it.
So a bit frustrating for us, because obviously we want to get in there, we want to have a look, I want to shove a camera down where that collapses, but the site has got security on, so we can't go on and get the shots that we would like to get. We'll keep an eye on it. I've already contacted Canal and River Trust. I'm trying to get into what's going on, when they're going to fix it. As Roy said, probably a contractor, because it's not really the fault of the canal. The canal has gone into something underneath it that has developed a fault. So it'll be a subcontractor. It might be the council that have to fix it or something like that. We'll see. We don't know. We'll see. But we think they're going to put in, they're probably going to take out the old brickwork that was the culvert, drop in a concrete pipe. That would be the easy solution, wouldn't it? Or today's solution. So we'll keep our eye on it, we'll keep you posted, we'll let you know what's going on, but there you go. We just thought we'd do a little video for you to explain why there's no water in the canal again here in April 2026.